Welcome to my next video build. It's Eduard's Bell X-1 in 1/48 scale. In this video I will improve the kit a little. I use my own 3D parts designed in Blender and make other details from scratch. I will need some filler and a lot of orange. Finally, I add a nicely detailed figure and build a base. Let's jump straight into the build. The Eduard kit is from 1997 and is showing its age a little. Often reboxed over the years, I use a current Profipack edition which contains PE parts, mask and resin wheels. Not bad for a fair price. The details are quite good, but leave a lot of room for improvement. We'll see how well it fits later. I start by separating and cleaning the parts and looking for where problems might occur. The part count is very low and the assembly instructions are very simple. I started gluing the first cockpit parts together and planned the further detailing of the model. The two fuselage halves have obvious gaps and will have to be reworked later. The resin wheels look very good and are prepared with a wire for painting. The National Air and Space Museum has highly detailed photos of the Bell X-1 on their website. I used these to create my own 3D printable files with Blender. I mainly designed distinctive parts in the cockpit as well as missing air intakes and nozzles. The 3D files are available via my profile at Decals. You can find the link in the description. The parts were printed with an Anycubic M3 with a layer height of 0.03 mm. The files contain more details than are visible here and can also be used for larger scales. Overall, I am very satisfied with the result of the prints. Now it's time to install the parts. The Eduard plastic is very thick and strong. Cutting, sanding and checking again and again leads to success here. All printed parts are glued with superglue. I didn't have an exact plan for the rivets, so I worked with photos again and created my own plan. I used a pencil to draw the rivet structure onto the model and Rosie the rivet here did the rest. Now it was time to improve the cockpit. First I drilled some holes and added rivets to the interior. Later I added some wires and attached the 3D printed parts. I used the reference photos as a guide to get as many details as possible. I really enjoyed this construction step and you can quickly get lost in the details. I think the combination of scratch build and 3D parts is very successful and I will continue to use it in the future. After a layer of primer, it was time to paint the cockpit. When choosing the color, I didn't follow the instructions but the reference photos. I sprayed the parts with AK real colors in different shades. I painted smaller details with a brush and acrylic paints, as well as the new AK markers. I really like these pens and I'm using them more and more for small parts or repairs. Before starting the weathering, the PE parts still have to be attached. Here you just have to select the right instrument panel for the respective X-1 version you want to build. If you like the content so far, consider subscribing to the channel. That helps small channels a lot. Thank you. For the weathering I use various filters to increase the color modulation and blend transitions. Afterwards everything is sealed with a matte clear coat. The cockpit is now finished and can be installed, but first I will show you the finished details. When installing the cockpit, you should start on the right half of the fuselage to avoid a gap at the cockpit door. Now you can align the instrument panel. The fit could be better and some sanding is necessary to get the fuselage halves together. With a little patience it will fit, but some gaps will remain visible. I use some plastic putty to fill the gaps. The cockpit is protected with masking tape. Sanding is easy to manage as the fuselage is shaped like a projectile. The next step is to restore rivets and panel lines. The wings and elevator are now attached. Again, some fillers needed to get a good result. The landing gear bays contain very little details, so I decided to improve them as well. I actually wanted to design 3D printed parts, but then decided to use scratch build parts. All I needed were plastic cards and some micro drills. The landing gear also received additional details. I glued the plastic hearts in several layers to create structure. Additional rivets provide more details and help with weathering later. These improvements didn't take much time and are in my opinion worth the effort. The finished landing gear and the wheelbase are given the same color as the cockpit. The wheels are now also painted. For details and chipping I use AK markers again. Before the model is painted, I mask the clear parts. The masks are included in the kit. The fit of the clear parts is very good. The painting begins with a layer of grey primer. Now you can see whether the sanding was successful or not. The clear parts were sprayed separately and attached later. For the fuselage I used AK Real Colors Orange. To get a bright orange I should have used the white primer. Despite several coats I was not satisfied at first. Later I added a coat of Gulf Orange, a racing car color, and it gave the bright orange I wanted. A coat of semi-gloss clear coat sealed the result in preparation for the decals. The decals are of good quality, but they are the typical Eduard decals where you can peel off the transfer layer if you want. I let the decals dry for 24 hours after applying them and then carefully removed the top layer. I was happy with the result and another layer of clear varnish sealed the decals for further weathering. The weathering shouldn't be too complicated this time. I didn't want to show a completely dirty aircraft, because it had only been used a few times and was thoroughly prepared before each test. So I used the dark oil wash to highlight the rivets and panel lines. The landing gear and wheelbase should be a bit dusty and match the blend base. The Abteilung oil colors did a great job. After all the excess was cleaned, the model received its final clear coat and was ready for assembly. First, I removed all the masking. Smaller repairs could be carried out quickly and the assembly went well. With the landing gear and clear parts installed, 2 more details needed to be added. The inside of the cockpit door has a lot of detail in the original, so I built it by scratch. I also added the distinctive sensor on the right wing. Small but important details that enhance the model. In order to present the model in an appealing way, you need a figure and a base. I used this World War II pilot figure from Corpus because it had a perfect pose and look for the project. The figure has nice details which helps with the painting. I cleaned the figure and prepared it for painting with wire. At the same time I started building the base. This time I'm using a piece of wood on which I want to create a small scene after landing in the desert. White glue seals the wood and forms a good base for the AK terrain paste. The base and figure were primed and the painting could begin. For figures I like to use little black sprayed from below and white from above to increase the contrast. To get a good contrast to the orange of the aircraft, I used very light colors for the ground. Later I created shadows and highlights using filters and pigments. The figure was painted with brushes and various acrylic paints. Filters were used here again to blend the color transitions. At the end, everything is sealed with a clear varnish. Now it's time to bring everything together. The final presentation will be in 2 parts. First I'll show the cockpit details before assembly and then the finished project. I would like to thank everyone for your interest in the project and the video. If you are able and want to, you can support the channel. A nice comment and thumbs up helps small channels a lot. Until next time, goodbye.